While Zoe is sharing, this is one of my most favorite topics. One, because I got to do this work in San Diego, and because, of course, it's helping people and pets stay together, especially during times of crisis. And then, so we're really happy to have Zoe here from BestyBnB to talk about those programs that might be available for you. So she's gonna be talking about that. I'm gonna do my best to talk about data, and we'll have the team on here. Data is like my least area of comfort, but kind of the data collected around what you could be looking at if you're shelter folks here today, animal shelter folks, what you could be looking at within your own shelter data, and then also a little bit of what we were seeing as some HOS partner shelters data around safety net and what like what statuses could be viewed as potential to be continuing to support people. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So here we are, Elkie, Director of Human Animal Support Services. And Zoe, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Zoe. I'm the Director of Engagement and Program Development with BestyBnB. And Elkie, do you want to share a little bit more about like HAS and the work that y'all do?
Yes, I will. Because I'm thinking, since you invited probably some of your followers and your partners, you might not be familiar with who Animal Sports Services is. So, which we call HOS, because obviously that was a mouthful. So here on the slide is just a great representation of the work that we do, and it really shows all the pieces and parts that make up the HOS model. But in addition to that, the HOS project is really meant to be an innovative initiative aimed at rethinking the animal sheltering traditional model. And we really focus on supporting people and pets, making sure we can keep them together, preserving that human animal bond, and of course, reducing the number of animals entering shelters. We really do encourage collaboration amongst animal welfare organizations, but of course, community-based services as well, really with the hopes and the goal of providing personalized and proactive support, again, to stop those animals from coming in and really position animal welfare as a social service. So we're going to keep talking about us, and it's a theme, right? Since HOS began, that animal services really is a social service, and we should all be looking at what we can do to support our community together. So if you're new to HOS, we'd love for you to consider becoming a partner, and it's free. It just means, that you acknowledge that this work is important and that we might come to you for certain, projects or conversations that you might be an expert in. And we're really hoping to expand our reach in 26 in that social services space. So you'll be hearing more about that as well. And Zoe, do you want to tell us about BestyBnB?
Yeah, thanks, Elkie. And, we're thrilled to work with HOS on so many different projects. They've been a wonderful supporter of BestyBnB and are always so encouraging in trying to connect us with different animal welfare organizations as we try to spread our reach. BestyBnB, for those who aren't familiar, is an online platform that partners with social services and animal welfare organizations to create or expand pet support programs through our platform. We provide temporary placements for pets while the owner receives crisis care, whether that's domestic violence shelter, homeless services, substance use treatment or mental health treatment, medical services. And we partner with service providers in all of those fields, as well as animal welfare organizations. BestyBnB was really founded on the idea of wanting to keep people and pets safe, connected, and together. Matt Krentz and Andy Bond are the co-founders of BestyBnB, and they first learned of the crisis and barrier that pets can create to care when they were listening to a local NPR story here in Kansas City, where I'm located. And in that local story, they did an interview with one of the local domestic violence agencies that shared one of the biggest barriers that their survivors face when trying to reach shelter is that they can't bring their pets. And the majority of the time when they learn that they can't bring their pets, they will choose the safety and care of their animal versus the safety that they need of shelter. And Andy and Matt were instantly able to connect with that idea of not wanting to leave a pet behind when you're facing an emergency or a crisis, as many people, I think, are able to connect with that idea. And they really jumped into action to learn as much as they could about the barrier that pets create to crisis services and how crisis service providers provide the support or maybe the barriers that they face when they're trying to provide that support. And that's how BestyBnB was created. We officially launched in the summer of 2022 and now on average provide about over 6,000 safe nights for pets every 6 months and partner with over 50 agencies to provide that temporary placement for their clients' care. We partner with organizations in a wide variety of ways and with organizations who are both, large hospitals. We just partnered with our first hospital this year, which is pretty exciting. We also partner with organizations that are small, volunteer or run organizations that are run by just a group of passionate people or even an individual who's just really passionate and wanting to support pet owners in their community. So if you're looking for ways to support pet owners in your community, we'd love to work with you and please don't hesitate to reach out. I am putting our website in the chat so that you can check out more information about BestyBnB if you're interested.
Thank you. So our objective today is kind of leveraging data to engage, and not only municipalities, really just to engage whoever you need to get these programs started. We're interested, of course, in building a sustainable network of crisis pet foster programs that support pet owners in accessing that essential services. And we often speak on the importance of collaboration, and we've worked with BestyBnB in the past. So we're hoping today that you walk away with not only like excitement about building a safety net program, but how to better understand the data, like how to sell that story. Because typically if you have some evidence and on why it's so important, it will make you a little bit more successful. So I think, kind of understanding the human animal bond. I'm sure everyone here, we talk about this all the time, but I think we just need to keep hitting it home, that preservation of the human animal bond. And I feel like the more we talk about it and the more you know where to find resources, right, that will help you. And I think it helps social services when you're really kind of thinking about how to evaluate, how to support the whole family that you may like of your clients, but also for animal shelters, right? And like how to sell the things. If you're a government entity, and for those that maybe don't quite get it, right? You have data backing you, you've got lots of research that will tell you about. And so we've all seen it, that animal bond in varied forms, depending on the person and pet. So it's really important that we acknowledge the bond directly, that it influences our emotional, physical, and social well-being of the individuals that you're serving, no matter their financial status, no matter their lifestyle, no matter their housing situation. It's really acknowledging how, when it's the right time to keep them together. And it starts by ensuring that they both get what they need. So the animal shelter acknowledging the human needs to get what they need and vice versa. So here's some stats that may or may not surprise you, that 98% of pet owners agree that their pets are an important part of their family. 95% of pet owners cannot imagine giving up their pet. So it's kind of what we're talking about today. Not kind of, we are talking about this today. And 84% of pet owners agree that there should be fewer restrictions on pets and rental housing. And that's just, kind of very, you know, granular look at one little piece of the pie, but I think it acknowledges that restrictions and barriers aren't helpful to preserving that human animal bond. And, according to the AVMA, that more than 80 million households in the US include at least one pet beyond the basic companionship. So these stats acknowledged here really consider them a part of the family and find it challenging to sometimes keep them intact. So we want to do our best to keep people and pets together. Um, some of you may have seen this video, but it is a video, an older video from the Humane Rescue Alliance in DC, but it really is a beautiful example of the importance of preserving the human-animal bond, but it also showcases the work that they're doing in the community. So I think for you animal welfare organizations, just kind of seeing how they get into the community will be just kind of great to reflect on.
Okay, bear with me as I try to share my screen on this.
Our work is centered on our belief that you can't help animals with supporting people too. And people say I'm great with people, and I never really thought about it that way. I just thought I was being compassionate, giving people dignity and respect, which I think is something basic that everyone deserves.
I love Miss Brown. Miss Brown taught me a lot. She really has. I grew up loving animals. I had pets all my life. They're just within me, within my heart. I love them. Like, these are my kids.
So Ms. Carolyn has been with the Hope program since probably the beginning, 2014, 2015. She loves animals. She loves people. She really has a heart for her community.
They just came and I said, okay. I just stopped putting food down, and here I have a bunch of them now. And they know me, so they're my babies. They just always keep me uplifted. When I have a bad day sometimes, like, I just come out here and I just look at them like I'm about to cry right now. Just talking about them. But that's how I am with them. I love them. Because of where we live, it's so hard to try to really get cat food and dog food for people. And every time I need food, Ms. Brown be there. That's just a blessing because everybody don't have an income. And the income they do have in this community is not that much. So the pantry is a lot of help.
From housing restrictions to pet care deserts to very expensive veterinary care, people in DC and beyond face a variety of barriers to their ability to provide care for their pet family members. We're finding creative ways to combat those barriers, whether it's providing low-cost veterinary care, distributing free pet food or other supplies, fighting against housing discrimination, or providing temporary care in a crisis situation for pets.
Here in New Jersey, we face the same barriers, and at St. Hubert's, we do everything we can to keep people and their pets together. Since the pandemic, our work has never stopped. We go door to door and talk to families in need. We go to the areas where families are going to need our services.
So I know that our clients appreciated the services because they always came out when it was raining, snow, sleet.
All my neighbors who, through the whole pandemic, we still have our dogs. We didn't have nothing else. We had our faith in our pets. I mean, they're family, right? You start downsizing and accommodating your bills. The dogs was never part of that accommodation. It's like, it wasn't even a discussion. We're gonna keep our dogs no matter what happened. I can call Shaq at any time, and I never received an answer saying no. It's never a no, no matter when my constituents reach out to her. Coco and Louis means a lot to me. Family, love, faith, strength, encouragement. I bought this condo 3.5 years ago, and because of the structural issues, the government came in and said that we would have to move. So it's just been a lot, especially through the pandemic. So even though I have to move, the security that I have you all, I have Shaq, I'm not worried.
Animal welfare doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's so dependent on what's happening within the community. In addition to all the direct care work that we do at the Humane Rescue Alliance, working on policy changes is so important because you're addressing some of the systemic and institutional issues that relate to pet ownership.
This year, we partnered with the DC Department of Aging and Community Living to combat senior isolation by providing a connection point with animals and being a resource to ensure a high quality of life for DC seniors and their animals.
I think one of the challenges with loneliness and isolation is that it's really hard to say I'm lonely. It's really hard to say I'm by myself and I need some help. But if you say, hey, here's an opportunity where you can see a dog or a chicken or whatever the animal, you don't have to say you're lonely. You can just say, I like animals and I'd like to show up. And you get that same connection. And maybe that's the bridge to another program that we have.
I have a lot of elderly people around here. And so I like turned them on to Miss Brown and the pantry. A lot of them can't get out to go get cat food or dog food. They like wheelchair bound, or no car, no family. So it's like we're their family that can help them with their animals.
I always say it's 90% people, 10% animals. Because at the end of the day, you're communicating with the people to help them to help care for their pets or help them to get services for their pets.
Love that video. Thank you, Zoe. So a little bit more on the human-animal bond. Because of all the varied ways, right, of looking at the impacts, there have been many studies over the years, and it can be kind of hard to find what you're looking for, maybe what has merit. So
an emaciated dog and
sorry, guys.
Thank you. Haas has pulled together a library of studies and research that you can either zap on your phone here, or you'll get it after the fact, or it's in the chat as well. So a lot of ways of keeping that. Of course, you can always search it. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can't. Searching things on our website can be a challenge, but if you put it in Google, you'll be able to find it. So the guide not only gives you insight, but it also can provide you with the evidence that you're looking for to help you add some programming to support people and their pets. And it really, it walks through the different ways of like what you're looking for. So if it's impact on health, there's some there. If it's impact on housing and like all that. So it's broken out in a variety of ways. So speaking of more data, are you okay over there?
Apologize. I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen and also the video that's happening in the background.
That's all right.
So I'm so
We
sorry.
have plenty of time. Like, who's talking to us?
I know.
For the HRA,
I think I have done that so many times, Zoe, I can't even tell you. So like when you
Thanks for your
forget to turn
patience.
off the video, audio of the video.
Okay, let's see. It's the challenge of switching between screens that always gets me. Okay, here we go.
So we are on human animal bond research. Grab that QR code. The link is in the chat. And now we'll talk a little bit about your own data, meaning your own sheltering data. So let's hit the word cloud there. So word cloud that some of you may have seen multiple times, but I think it's great. It's a great example of what you probably might see and experience at your shelter. What are you looking at? What do you see? What is glaring at you here? So see the top, reasons for intake. What do you see? Throw it in the chat. Can you not see the big word cloud? There, thank you, Sandra. Yes, general. General is the largest. So I guess that's probably, you might not know. So all the littler ones, right? So general is the majority. So when an animal is coming in, folks are choosing general or null more than any of the other more detailed. So obviously, if you're trying to develop a program based on what your community needs, looking at this is going to give you a little bit of a struggle. Yep, very vague, not useful. And we'll go a little bit more into that. So looking at your shelter software, it's not typically set up to really understand the root causes of pet intake. So we're going to kind of go into that a little bit more. You know, our traditional way of asking those questions just can't wrap its mind around the complexities of why somebody might be relinquishing. And if you've ever seen Amanda talk on the nuances, and we've given a great scenario on like, is it behavior? Is it the new baby? Is it not enough time? Right? Like this gives shelters a much better opportunity, a much better look at how to develop like what's happening in their community, and then what are the gaps and what can we do? And I think we're not going to go really into all the details on intake reasons, but it's providing you those resources so you can dig a little bit deeper after today and then work on enhancing those processes. So this little beauty here is what Haas put together as owner surrender reason. So like the big umbrella reason and then the smaller nuanced reasons. And we put together this list that we hope becomes a more standardized across the industry. We worked with SAC as well, so they utilize these intake reasons, again, to truly understand the nature and why people need to surrender their pets. So of course, owner surrender reasons we always should collect why they're coming initially. Now, all of these nuances, might be pie in the sky, but it really is just a reminder that every individual has some nuances behind what they're initially saying and why they're bringing in their animals. So this list could be used for you all to update your own or create a brand new kind of intake reason list for your shelter. But just so you know, it was created using lots of research, shelter focus groups, and lots of knowledge from leading animal welfare national organizations, during some HOS pilot work that we've done in the past. So let's kind of talk about intake reasons that are likely to benefit from a safety net foster program. So this data was pulled from 27 HOS partner shelters that covers intake reasons that are likely could possibly been diverted, right? If there was more robust safety net foster type programming. So, I want to acknowledge that the short-term life change 6%, sorry, it's a little small here, is only 6% of the owner surrender data for this group of shelters. But I think we can all acknowledge that the impact of keeping people with their pets, especially when they're going through a crisis, is really something that weighs on us in the field. Obviously, it's impacting those that are experiencing it, but I just know from the many conversations I've had with people that need just a short period of time. And when I say short, maybe 90 days, everyone goes, "Ooh, 90 days, that's a lot." Or, and there might short could be 2 weeks, it could be 90 days, it could be 6 months. It just, short is not forever in people's minds, right? They just need time. So I know sometimes it might be hard to go, all right, 6% of our total intake is kind of a smaller number, but you just think about, and we'll talk a little bit more about morale with staff on being able to have programs to support, but obviously you're keeping and preserving that human animal bond with those folks. And so some examples, I just want to give some examples. Sorry, I started from the bottom because it's the one that grabs me the most. So for housing situations, 22% of this group of shelters, their owner surrender and return reasons were for housing. So you could look at that and go, well, some of it could be, short-term fixed with a short-term fix. So like we look at those more intricate details of intake. So we've got housing as the big one, and then loss of home, no shelter, can't find housing that allows my pets, cannot afford pet fees, pet rent, or ongoing fees. So maybe that one's a little more nuanced, but if given an opportunity to find short-term foster care for their pets, maybe they could have time to sort these things out and then get their pet back. And then of course, short-term life change. I'll just kind of go through what some of those, since we can't see the examples. We've got owners incarcerated, military relocation, owners temporarily hospitalized, which we see a lot of, course, domestic violence, and maybe owners going into substance use treatment programs. So I'm going to give you more resources here, just so since we're talking about intake, and we've developed this guide here that you can get the QR code, and the guide is going to be in the chat and you'll receive it after, with everything you need to really kind of better understand what we were talking about with those intake reasons. Of course, that includes free staff training, the recommended list, and conversational interviewing practices, which, we know it's not just as easy as saying, here, we're going to change these. We're going to change these intake reasons in our database. But really acknowledging that it's a process, right? And how we're speaking to people and how we're getting down really to, again, the root causes of why that animal is coming in. So we're going to look at safety net foster data. So really understanding what's happening in that space that we're going to be talking about today. So this data was from 13 HOS partner shelters in 2024. So, while I'm looking here and while you're looking at it, I want to see if anything surprises you, and you can feel free to put it in the chat. So for this group of 13 shelters, housing was the top given reason for pets taken into a safety net program. So they actually had a developed program. And then followed by no time overwhelmed, which is interesting, and owner household factors. So that could be a variety of things, right? So for this study, we looked at those 13 shelters and that had safety net animals. And of those animals, 708 were cats, 1341 were dogs, which is interesting because being at San Diego Humane, we found it a bit easier to place cats. But obviously, I think dogs have a greater need. The overall average length of stay for safety net animals was for a cat 22 days and dog 13 days. Another thing I find very interesting, probably because depending on the shelter was dependent on what their policy allowed. Some might be 2 weeks, it could be a week. In San Diego, sorry, I keep reflecting on that, it's just my experience, was 90 days. So when you're looking at that average, that might be why they're a little less. You think about some rehab programs, they could be 30, 60, 90 days, and there might be some aftercare involved as well. So, really kind of looking at what capabilities does your shelter have in managing it. And I'm talking about this too, and BestyBnB has a lot of fixes for some of these things. But I'm just going off of, if a shelter has their own program that they manage. And then return to owner rates, I feel like we're pretty high. The cat, again, another interesting fact, 43%, 44% of cats were returned. And then 70% of dogs. Again, remember, this is a 13 shelter kind of collective. I do believe, again, San Diego has a pretty high rate. It's like in the 80s. I know, Sandra, huh? I find that interesting too with the cats, because you would think cats are maybe a little bit easier to find housing depending on what their situation is, but would love to. It'd be great for us to survey folks that have utilized these types of programs. Note to everyone out there.
Yeah, I also see in the chat too comments about seeing if cities and states are working on housing legislation and making sure that pets are part of that, because there could be some funding available, which is, I always love the idea of making funding available for pet support within municipalities.
And I love the thought, like thinking like there are some government entities out there really thinking about this, which is awesome, right? Because can be one of the hardest things. The longest process is getting that many people on board to acknowledge how important this is to their community. So this was a great case study with Toronto Humane Society. And it just kind of shows you another, program in action. Sorry, here, let me grab onto I'm having a hard time reading my thing here. So some of the key findings were 70% of admitted animals were reunited with their owner. So they had a pretty good average. It doesn't say, I would imagine it's mostly dogs and cats. Now see here, their average length of stay, 174 days. Maybe we should have learned a little bit about their program. But I think that's amazing that they were able to do that. I know that might sound scary to some of you. But the cost per day was interesting, the cost of care per day. So I think kind of, having, again, all of this data available to you when kind of thinking about what might make sense for your shelter is really helpful. So this study will make sure that you get this link as well, so you can kind of see what happened in Toronto. And of course, reaching out to them, they're very interested in sharing their information. So they're super responsive, especially when it comes to their community programs. They're doing such a great job. So Zoe's going to talk a little bit more about kind of understanding that One Health. But I just, again, wanted to throw some more data at you that we really do as a social services group here and as animal services, really think of the work that we're doing with them as a united approach. People want it's easier for them, especially when they're going through challenging times. And there is such strong support for pets in society. And I feel oftentimes these surveys, and I apologize for not knowing all the exact details of these surveys, is that oftentimes they're asking people who don't have pets as well. So getting their thoughts and feelings, because you need them, right? When it comes to policy changes within the government, it's not just about people who have pets, it's also better understanding your whole entire community. But pet owners agree that society should be more pet friendly. And that pet ownership is really important to public health. So 92% of pet owners agree that hospitals, schools should welcome and have therapy animal programs. I've experienced them. We see such a change in attitude and happiness when those animals walk through the door. 90% of pet owners agree that emergency and temporary housing should accommodate pets, of course, and 84% of pet owners agree that the government should encourage pet ownership for a healthier society. And knowing how many animals out there are looking for homes, we would love for that to be the case. So I think Zoe is going to talk to you a little bit more about like, what does this united approach look like?
Yeah, thanks, Elkie. So BestyBnB, again, we partner, we're not a direct service provider. So when a pet owner reaches out to us for support, we refer them to one of our agency partners. You guys are always welcome to tell people about BestyBnB who are in crisis and looking for ways to support, because I talk to a lot of pet owners every week who are looking for a temporary placement for their home, and we'll connect them to one of our agency partners. So that's not an issue at all, but just know that that's kind of how our processes work. And the way that we do that, the way that we're able to provide support through these partnerships, is this very collaborative experience. We really feel like collaboration is key when you're trying to make your community pet friendly. And One Health is a big part of that. So when we're thinking of One Health, we're really thinking about ensuring that people have access to care, not only for themselves, but also for their pets, because typically people will forgo care for themselves in order to care for their animal. There are many organizations that will host pop-up clinics for people who are experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity, where they are providing veterinary care and human health care as well, all in a same pop-up clinic. I've been a part of some of those events prior to working at BestyBnB. I worked at a domestic violence agency for about 8 years. And in that role, I would provide domestic violence advocacy to folks who had pets and were looking to keep themselves and their pets safe. So in those pop-up clinics, I would provide domestic violence advocacy and talk to folks who are experiencing domestic violence and looking for ways to leave their abusive relationship, but wanting to keep their pet safe during that transition. And so when we're working in those collaborative models, we're able to really address everyone's need. And pets are such a huge part of that need, and people's care is a huge part of that need. If people do not get the care that they need, they're not going to be able to care for their pet. And then the cycle of abandonment, owner surrenders, the cycle of people, being in repeat housing insecurity, or being repeat issues where they're facing substance use or mental health treatment, or having, longer term health care needs because they're not addressing the immediate issue. All of those things kind of work in this cycle where people are just not getting the support that they need. So I wanted to share a story of a recent experience that we had this summer working with one of our behavioral health partners who had a pet. They were working with a pet owner. The owner needed to go into temporary mental health crisis care. It was only going to be about a week, but they had a pet, and that pet really needed a safe place to stay. Otherwise, that owner wasn't willing to go into that treatment. So that behavioral health partner is University Health, which is a hospital system here in Kansas City. They started partnering with us. We've been working on, building up that relationship for about a year, but officially we launched our partnership back in the spring. So this was one of their first pet bookings through BestyBnB. And they were easily able to find a temporary placement for this pet. The pet was housed with one of our pet caregivers, I would say within the working day. So, the pet owner said, yep, I'm willing to go to treatment if you can find a place for my pet. The staff there found a place for their pet through the BestyBnB platform. And within about a working day, that pet was able to go to that pet caregiver's home. So that pet caregiver will provide care for that animal. They will, do the daily feedings. They will, be that foster home for that animal. But while that animal was receiving care from that pet caregiver, the caregiver realized that that pet maybe needed some extra support. Unfortunately, because of the pet owner's mental health crises, the pet had been a little bit neglected. So the pet's Coat had been a little neglected. It needed some extra grooming, and it also had a hot spot that had gotten infected as well. Because of the pet owner's mental capacity, that's probably typically not how they take care of their animal. But in that moment where they were facing a mental health crisis, it's possible that their animal's care had been neglected as well. And so fortunately, that caregiver was able to recognize that, reached out to both BestyBnB and the organization who was coordinating the care, University Health. And we were able to coordinate veterinary care for that pet. That pet was able to go immediately within, I would say within 24 hours, we were able to book an appointment for that pet, was able to get some medical grooming as well as medication for their hotspot, and really get their needs met as well. This is all while the pet owner is receiving care within the hospital system. So they were inpatient, receiving mental health treatment, and they were able to focus on their needs, get stable, get back up on their feet, so that they could continue to care for their animal in the way that they were typically accustomed to. While that animal was receiving care with the pet caregiver, the pet owner was, maybe getting their, I don't know the details because it's confidential, but for example, it could be that they're getting their medication stabilized or they're getting a plan for therapy on track. In instances where they might be, staying at a domestic violence shelter, it's possible that, maybe they're getting an order of protection in place, or they are, in transition to getting their locks replaced by their landlord to make their house safe again. Oftentimes when people are facing an immediate crisis, it doesn't take very long or that many resources to address that crisis for them to be ready to be reunited with their pet. So while that animal was receiving care, the owner was getting back up on their feet, receiving the support that they needed from the human services provider, all while the human services provider was coordinating this support. When the owner was ready to be reunited with their pet, we faced a challenge because the human services provider originally was able to provide transportation for the pet to the caregiver's home. But then, by the time that the pet owner was ready to be reunited, they had too many appointments with other clients and couldn't do that reunification. So we actually reached out to one of our animal welfare partners, Pet Resource Center of Kansas City, who said that they would be willing to provide transportation of the pet from the caregiver's home back to the pet owner, which meant that we were all working together to create this very collaborative care to ensure that this pet owner was able to be reunited with their owner. We had 4 different organizations working together to make sure that this pet owner had the support that they needed for themselves and had the support that they needed for their pet. And it ended up being a happy ending because that pet owner got to keep their pet as a lifelong companion. But let's imagine what would happen if we didn't have this collaboration, if we were siloed in our own, worlds, we're not communicating, we're not working together, we're not offering that support. Immediately, the first step would be that pet owner may not reach out for support and may not get the care that they need because they fear that they wouldn't be able to keep their pet. They didn't have anyone else to care for their animal. And so immediately that care that they need stops and they can't find it. Next, let's say that caregiver didn't have access to, or our organizations working together didn't have access to being able to find a veterinary clinic to be able to provide that support to the pet. That would mean that when the pet owner was reunited with their animal, they would be kind of back to square one of kind of feeling overwhelmed, maybe anxious, and sure, they might have more capacities now that they've received the treatment and care that they need, but it's still, we want to set up that relationship of pet and pet owner for success. And so being able to provide that veterinary care for that pet owner while they're receiving care for themselves means that when they're reunited, it feels a little bit less overwhelming to provide care for their animal. And then also too, when we think about that transportation of need of the pet owner needing to get reconnected with their animal, but this organization who was originally coordinating care didn't have time to provide that transportation from caregiver to pet owner. Again, we're kind of disrupting the care of the animal and disrupting the care of that pet owner wanting to be reunited with their pet. And so having the support of the animal welfare organization who came in and provided that transportation was crucial, and really supported that social service provider in being able to address their own clients' needs while there was an animal welfare organization in the community that could address the pet's needs. So that collaboration just shows how many organizations can come together to seamlessly support both the pet and the owner, preventing the pet from having to be owner surrendered, and also preventing the owner from or allowing that owner to be able to access the care and support that they needed. BestyBnB, in my role, I was behind the scenes kind of supporting this collaboration where I was making that vet appointment. I was reaching out to the animal welfare organization to coordinate that transportation. And so that's what BestyBnB can do to support your organization too, is be that kind of behind the scenes supporter in establishing this coordination and establishing this collaborative support for pet owners in your community.
And I think so. Okay, we have 15 minutes, Zoe, and we have a
Okay.
lot. So I'm going to zip through some of this because I think this one, people know, like you all on this call, I think Zoe just kind of showcased it. What we're seeing here, barriers preventing success in social services for pet owners, right? People, if they don't have food, if they don't have the ability to get pet food, they're giving their human food. They remain unhoused if there's shelters that don't accept pets. They might remain in the abusive situation if they don't have a place for them and their pet. They use them funds on their pet versus themselves. So I think we all acknowledge that if we don't take care of the human, the pet sometimes goes without, and vice versa, right? Or they give to the pet and the human goes without. So talking about like taking action. So today we're going to talk about, again, using your data, and then Zoe's going to go into how to create those sustainable solutions with BestyBnB. But since we are talking about data, we do need to cover this a little bit. So, use data, use the stories, but the resources that we're going to be providing you with is our government budgeting. And I know that sounds like, oh, I'm not in the government and budgeting. No, it helps you understand how the government budgets. It also gives you tips and tricks on it, like this is kind of business budgeting and this is what government budgeting looks like. There are links to terms like a glossary. So it's much more in depth than just budgeting basics. And then we also have a how to pilot a program toolkit I would recommend. So if you're really thinking about, even if it is working with BestyBnB, it's like when you use the word pilot, sometimes leadership is more interested in going, okay, that might be something we can look at if we're just maybe thinking about it for a short period of time. So I just recommend checking those resources out. Go ahead, Zoe.
Right. So when BestyBnB partners with a community, we really try to work together to create a sustainable and scalable solution with multiple different organizations. BestyBnB was founded in Kansas City, so that's where our most robust network of care is, and we're really trying to recreate the success that we've had here in Kansas City and other metropolitans and in other communities. We do partner with communities of all different sizes. Kansas City is a pretty mid-size metropolitan. The metropolitan as a whole is about 2 million people. Kansas City as a city is about 500,000 or 600,000. So it's not huge, but it's not small. But we do partner with organizations in many different sizes. But when we partner with organizations in a new community, we really want to establish collaborations with multiple organizations, because we don't think that it can just be one organization who is creating this solution alone. Part of that means we are establishing partnerships with those organizations. We are planning and creating preparation for this kind of collaborative launch within a new community. We are recruiting for new pet caregivers, because BestyBnB doesn't recruit for pet caregivers in a community before we have partners who will be using them. And then we also talk about community engagement and expanding, because we want this to be something that supports when we get started, we want it to be ever growing. My goal and my hope for BestyBnB's future is that every animal welfare organization and every social service provider will have the ability to collaborate to provide pet support through BestyBnB. So the first step is that partnership formation. We are establishing key roles in your community. BestyBnB will provide the technology to coordinate pet care and the training and vetting of pet caregivers to ensure safety of the pets who are in crisis. We also support the organization in building policy and procedure when they're building up their own pet support program or expanding pet support programs through BestyBnB. The other key roles are animal welfare organizations who can offer expertise in animal services. They might assist in pet caregiver recruitment, providing that veterinary care or behavior support. They also can be the primary account holder, where they provide temporary placements for pets through BestyBnB in an effort to keep pets out of their shelter environment. Many of our agency partners are animal welfare organizations. I would say the majority of partners that we have are domestic violence agencies, but animal welfare organizations are like very close to that number as well. We might even, I'd have to double check the stats, but we might be actually partnering with more animal welfare organizations at this time versus domestic violence agencies. Then we also have the social service providers. Our goal is to spread the responsibility of crisis care beyond animal welfare organizations and asking social service providers to step up to the plate to provide that care for pet owners without having to make a referral to an animal welfare organization. In my opinion, referrals can be really frustrating for someone who is facing a crisis. When you're trying to get the help that you need, if you're faced with a referral to another organization who maybe refers you to another organization, you're just kind of stuck in this loop and people are going to get overwhelmed and give up pretty quickly. And then we also ask that we engage additional community stakeholders. This might be, community organizations who support in pet caregiver recruitment or donor engagement. It could be additional stakeholders who are just within the animal welfare world or human services world who maybe just want to support this initiative because they feel passionate about it. Planning and preparation, as we determine our roles within this collaboration, we will also develop a shared vision and goals for this partnership. And all of this is in partnership with animal welfare organizations or social service agencies and BestyBnB. BestyBnB is really here to support you every step of the way. We hope that this will be something that enriches your organization, but doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, this is taking up all of my time. I don't feel like I have the capacity to handle this. That's why I'm here. That's what that I'm here to support you to do. We also determine resource allocation and funding opportunities. When we fundraise as a collaborative to create Safe Night funds, we are expanding our opportunity for donor engagement. What we call a night with a BestyBnB pet caregiver a safe night. And so when we are engaging multiple audiences through multiple organizations, saying we're looking for funding for safe nights that every organization part of this collaboration could use, we're really expanding our reach and creating more opportunities for success. We also are onboarding BestyBnB agency partners. So the partners who are using BestyBnB to place pets for their clients. And part of that onboarding is training their staff on how to use the platform, creating policy and procedures, and really supporting their organization and feeling comfortable offering pet support. This is something that BestyBnB does one-on-one with each organization to make sure that we're creating policy and procedure that best matches their workflow and how their staff may be using this platform.
Zoe, what is the and if you answer this later, let me know. What do you find is the biggest challenge when launching this program in a community?
Yeah, I think it varies from community to community. But I would say the biggest challenge that we've faced so far is trying to engage pet caregivers that will support the needs of the organization, because that varies, right? So some organizations just need a very temporary care. Some organizations just need or are going to need care for much longer because they're working with someone who's facing housing insecurity. And so that's where this collaboration also comes in, is that we work together to do pet caregiver recruitment. Oftentimes when we are talking to animal welfare organizations, they're like, our foster homes are sacred. We do not want you to touch our foster homes. And I respect that 100%. And when you have a good foster, oh man, you don't want to ruin that relationship. They are so valuable. And that's why we are leaning on those social service agencies to spread the word about becoming a pet caregiver to their audience, because we know that their audience loves pets. 80 million families own pets in America. And so that means that a huge majority of people are pet lovers, want to have pets as part of their community. And so we are tapping into a new audience to be able to engage them as part of this work. Part of that pet caregiver recruitment might be a targeted outreach through volunteers, and email blasts, social media content. We might do a marketing campaign where we do press releases to connect and engage local media. I think that that's the most beneficial way, is to reach out to the local news, local radio, local newspaper, any local news outlet who wants to share the story of collaboration, of people who want to create solutions, and then also sweet stories about not wanting to leave pets behind in moments of crisis. BestyBnB provides each of our partners a robust marketing package to be able to engage their community in pet caregiver recruitment. And then we will also create targeted campaigns specifically for your organization in collaboration with the community, with the collaborative, and then also with individual organizations. And then that last step is community expansion, engagement and expansion. So we hope that, as we see success, as we engage organizations, more organizations will want to become BestyBnB partners, will want to provide this support for their clients. And we'll also continue to spread the responsibility beyond animal welfare when we're looking at pet crisis and pet care. Oh, and just as an added note, without bringing more animals into shelter, which is key, right?
Yes.
All right. So this is a benefit not only to pet owners in your community, but it's also a benefit to your organization. I can't emphasize this enough, that when you provide pet support for people who are facing crisis, you're going to see an added value. You're going to see increased engagement from your community, hopefully from donors, from just the support in your organization in general, because from the social service side, you're going to see an increased engagement from pet owners. From the animal welfare organization, you're going to see an increased engagement from people who are more concerned with human services and human support. So these are new audiences that you're going to be tapping into, and you're going to see that increased engagement and support in your organization. You're also going to see increased positive outcomes. Those outcomes could be fewer owner surrenders, or it could be more people are able to access your services if you're a service provider for human services. You're going to see those increased positive outcomes because you're making your services more accessible. You're making people feel more trust in your organization, and making people feel like they have the resources that they need in order to make navigating their crisis a success. And also increased collaboration. That collaboration between organizations, so that you're not so siloed, is so important. Again, you're not going to be able to just when a pet owner is facing crisis, they're not just facing an individual need. They're not just facing, I just need a place for my pet. They're not just facing, I just need, substance use treatment. There's so many needs that go within that, instant crisis that need to be addressed. And that can really only be addressed when multiple organizations are collaborating together.
And I'm going to take these out of order a little bit. So when we're talking about collaboration, okay, we have 3 minutes. So just when we talk about collaboration, we know that funders love collaboration. So your funding opportunities will be expanded. When the animal welfare can be talking to social services, vice versa, which I think, when we talk about collaboration, that also rolls into community trust. Like if you're working with an organization that the community trusts, and maybe they don't know as much about you, or maybe they've had some challenging times with you and their pets, And so that trust might not be there. So adding another entity to it, but also being a solution for them can increase trust. And Zoe, I forgot to share my story at the beginning. So I'm going to do a quick version because I think this covers staff morale. Working with a team that was responsible for helping get pets reunited back to their people after a short-term stay, or also having a safety net foster program, having that tool when you're constantly maybe saying no, or you're seeing some of the more difficult things when folks maybe no longer want their animals or they're not coming to reclaim, you have this availability to say yes. I do have something for you. And so my quick story that I missed was when I first started managing our safety net foster program, our actual manager was out of town. So I was taking the phone calls, and I had a mom call, and she was just, really struggling because her son needed to go into a rehab situation, of course, that exact day. And she was thinking he wasn't going to go because there was no place for his dog. Our safety net program was filled. That's what they were told. Anyway, fast forward, I was able to work with the shelter director. We were able to do short term at the shelter, then get placed into foster. And obviously, of course, what that did for me in the work, right? If I had maybe more challenging situations after that, just knowing I was able to keep them together and he could go to rehab knowing that his pet was safe and that she would be there for him when he returned. And I can't tell you like the countless conversations that my team has when they can say yes, and how that helps combat those negative situations that they might experience.
I love that story because it just, it's just really important to think about how much saying no and how much facing these crises and knowing that people aren't getting the help that they need impacts your staff. So we're really encouraging you to take the first step and really overcome those what ifs. In my experience, all of the what ifs that people are worried about are really not going to be the majority of the things that you're going to be facing. The majority of the things that you're going to be facing are successes. And so we would love to work with you in order to create this kind of collaborative change within your community. The first step is to host a virtual community meeting by partnering with HAS and BestyBnB to do so. We want to, within those meetings, engage key partners, which are animal welfare organizations, community or social service providers, and community stakeholders.
So in this meeting, obviously getting to know your backyard, available services and community members, that's who we want to invite. And you could check out our ecosystem mapping. It might be a much bigger project that will help you kind of determine who we want to invite. It helps get it all organized. Identify your areas of needs and goals, define roles and responsibilities for a partnership. I know this is a partnership, but sometimes partnership, that word can be like a stressful kind of thing, like, ooh, a big partnership. But, just acknowledging that this is just getting the conversation started and acknowledging the positive outcomes that this relationship / partnership could end up in. And really think about re-engaging in old partnerships and identify new ones based on your goals. But when I think about re-engaging, like think about those case managers that have reached out to you. Right? Like, because, really finding success is finding those on the other side of the aisle that are really passionate. So those that are passionate about the humans or those that are passionate about the animals and moving this forward. So just kind of think if you've tracked that, or you have emails where you're like, I had to say no to this group, but bring them into the conversation and show them. So, just taking a little bit of thought on who would be the right fit to bring to the initial meeting. But we would love to sit with both of you, because I think us both being there, obviously, Zoe with the program expertise, and us just being able to acknowledge where to find research and give folks like where we've seen success.
Yeah, so with that, we just want to thank you. Sorry, we're a couple of minutes over. There's never enough time to share all the information that you need to share. But to get started, please reach out to Elkie and myself, and we'd love to set up a time for us to meet with your community, to engage and learn more about how we can support you.